Hey traders, Marcello with the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. So far we have Apple sales collapsing 24%, Elon Musk having a problem with an arson situation in Europe, and we even have some conspiracy theory news with the fires in Texas. Let's go ahead and get started. Record highs across the board when it comes to stocks. The only stock market in the U.S. that didn't hit record highs was the Dow, which went down 0.94%. All stocks were down except for Canada. Canada went up 0.85% in North America, but the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ did hit record highs. Overseas market news, the European markets mostly higher. The Spain market was the biggest winner there. Latin America, I would say mostly lower outside of Colombia, which was positive. Brazil, which is the largest market, economy and market in all of Latin America, they went down 1.66%. Africa and the Middle East was mixed, with Egypt going up over 8%. And then we have Asia and Australia mostly higher, with the Kospi in South Korea being the biggest winner there. We got some conspiracy theory news this week. Where's my button at? The Smokehouse Creek fire in Texas, which is the largest blaze in Texas history. I'm going to turn off the air here. Something was interesting that came across my desk, that 80% of all of the cattle feed was impacted in the area. So let's kind of put two and two together. I don't know if you guys remember back in the year during the pandemic where there was a situation where chickens stopped laying eggs. I don't know if you heard about this, but what's happening, there was a lot of people that were reporting that their chickens just stopped laying eggs all of a sudden. And when they stopped buying the feed, if you don't know what feed is, basically think of it like a dog food for chickens and horses and all kinds of things. You go and you buy it at an agricultural store, kind of like a Home Depot or Office Depot for agriculture. When they stopped buying that feed from the store, all of a sudden the chickens started laying eggs again. And now we have a situation where about 80% of all of the feed is impacted in Texas, where the actual fires are. So if we look at a much larger scale, in Europe, for example, they're trying to force farmers to, cut down on their farming and kill livestock. It kind of seems like they're going after the food, and they're engineering creative ways to be able to do that, because what are their chances? I don't know if you guys remember the food processing facilities during 2020 and 21. There was one that had not just one, but two planes fly into it, right? There's something not kosher going on. After examining over 1,000 patients, doctors found that it's called the pandemic disease. I don't want to say it because I don't want them to ban my channel again. But people who they took 1,000 people and they measured them after they got the thing in your arm, right? The injection from the pandemic. 70% of the people that got the injection developed the long pandemic disease. Not after the infection, but after the thing in your arm. And I think most people are starting to realize what's happening with the thing in your arm. And I think this year is going to be, unfortunately, the year of cancer. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to start seeing that rise. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen a lot of family members or friends do that, unfortunately, but definitely shouldn't have put that foreign substance in your arm. RuPaul, if you guys don't know who she is, she's a multimillionaire drag queen. She's now building a fortified compound in Wyoming, preparing for civil war. If you guys remember, Mark Zuckerberg was building a $100 million end of the world bunker. Biden also was reportedly building one, even though the license that he got for his permit for building was for a fortified fence. And lithium-ion batteries in e-bikes and other green vehicles now have become one of the largest causes of fires in New York City. There have been more blazes this year in 2 months than in the entire year of 2019. Bitcoin and crypto. Bitcoin hit a world record. A new high, almost 70,000. It's also the most recent high in the last 2 years. It's up 10.33%. When I took the numbers on Saturday morning, it was about 68,538. BRICS, which is the economic bloc, or let's say the group of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are looking to develop an independent payment system with cryptocurrency and blockchain. And Mexico now, which is a significant economy, not one of the largest in the world, I think it's number 11 or 13, they want to join BRICS now in 2024 as well. So it looks like the power structure, or the I don't know the best way to phrase it, but essentially the BRICS now have a larger share of the economic power in the world than do the G7. So they might be actually making the rules going forward. In commodities, the U.S. economy in January 2021 was growing 6.5%, while the inflation was only 1.4%. But remember that they keep telling us that the inflation is 3, 4, 5%. But if we look at numbers for natural gas for home heating, for example, that went up over 34%. Electricity has risen over 27%, and gas 3 years later has risen 37% as well. So in reality, the inflation are really the numbers in, Five Guys. They've gone up 50, 60, 70% for all you guys that love that Five Guys story. U.S. fiscal deficits, and likely the increase in the U.S. dollar's weakness is turning everybody to gold. That's part of the reason, for example, why Bitcoin hit a record high as well. Gold on Tuesday went up 1%, hitting a new record high at $2,150.50, but closed the week at $2,179.60, 2.30% positive. So gold just keeps going higher and higher and higher. Silver didn't hit a record high, but it did go up 0.78% to $24.36. And in financial and banking news, I thought this was really interesting. In September of 2023, the Chinese yuan overtook the euro as the second most used currency in the SWIFT trade system. The SWIFT trade system is essentially what the entire world uses to be able to make cross-border payments. And they got to up to 5.8% of all international payments. This is big news because what happens is the US dollar is still by far the most used currency in the world, but there are more dollars outside of the United States than inside the United States. So as more countries start to make direct payments with their local currencies, which there's an absolute revolution going on right now with that, more dollars are going to come back to the United States. As more dollars come back to the United States, the dollar is going to weaken. It's simple supply and demand. If there's a lot of something, it's going to make it cheaper. And how does a currency get cheaper? It devalues, or there's an increase in inflation. So this is going to continue to increase. I wouldn't be surprised if the United States hit really bad case of 20, 30, 40, 50% inflation due to the fact that all of these dollars are going to start coming back home, and we're going to have a very serious problem on our hands. Another regional bank is in trouble. The New York Community Bank Corp was halted by the New York Stock Exchange. The bank admitted material weaknesses in loan oversight. They went down 42% on Wednesday. They're down 60% for the year. And now the FDIC has added another 8 banks to the quote-unquote problem banks, with assets totaling $66.3 billion. They're also noting that the office space and the CRE loans warrant monitoring. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year we have some huge financial chaos, especially, because it's an election year. That's when fun things happen. Credit card debt jumps to an all-time high as credit card rates hit a new record. A notable milestone as well that the FICO credit scores have declined for the first time in a decade. This is the consumer spending, which is a significant number in the United States, because remember that in the U.S., almost 70% of all the economy in the U.S., almost 70% is consumer spending. So if consumers start to have problems with their credit cards or they're racking up too much debt, that means that the consumer isn't doing well, and that can carry over into the overall economy. U.S. bank profits dropped 44% in quarter 4 in 2023. Part of the reason why the FDIC is saying that the banking industry still has significant downside risks. And the U.S. Department of Treasury says that popular social entitlements like Medicare and Social Security is underfunded by $175 trillion. To put that into perspective, the total U.S. debt is 34 trillion or so, and the yearly budget for the U.S. is about $4 to $6 trillion. So we're literally walking into an economic landmine. And they say that the cash reserves for Social Security run out in 2033. So if you're about to retire, you should probably get that money sooner than later. And there's a problem now where the government has taken money out. They've, quote unquote, borrowed money from Social Security and Medicare and then just not put it back. So we're literally just walking into a financial time bomb. Despite present political rhetoric in the U.S. and inflation over time, another insignificant cost price, let's say, or a number that shows what things have risen really. January 2021, a fixed 30-year mortgage on a $400,000 home was $1,349. Again, January 2021. January 2024, 3 years later, the same $400,000 house with a 7% interest rates would be $2,148, or a 59% increase. But inflation is only 4%, 5%, 3%. Political news. The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday unanimously voted 9-0 to restore Trump to the 24 presidential primary ballots, rejecting state attempts to bar him from office. In economic news, South Korea, not a major economy in the world, but the sixth largest economy that exports, meaning they're the sixth largest exporter in the world. Their industrial output fell second consecutive month in a row. So that's another sign for the overall economy. And on Friday as well, the Labor Department posted that the U.S. added more than 275,000 jobs, and the employment rate surged to 3.9%, or a 25-month high. Corporate news, NVIDIA overtook Saudi Arabia's Aramco to be the third largest most valuable company based on market cap. Number one is Apple and Microsoft, Microsoft, then Apple. They keep going back and forth. Nordstrom, which is a higher-end retail chain that gives an idea of what's happening with the consumer spending, issued a muted look, I should say, from 2024. They're not doing very well because the consumer spending isn't doing very well. And Kroger, which is the U.S. supermarket, the largest supermarket in the U.S. and the fifth largest retail chain, they rose almost 10% after better than anticipated earnings in quarter four. I attribute this to the inflation. There's a lot of companies that are actually raising prices a little more than they should because of the excuse of inflation. And Warren Buffett has acquired almost 250 million shares of the petroleum or all-encompassing oil and gas company called Occidental Petroleum starting in 2022. $15 billion position, about 9% of all their assets in Berkshire Hathaway are invested in this company. This kind of tells you what I always tell you guys: watch what people do, don't watch what people say. So if Warren Buffett's company, which is known to do very good things, has invested 9% of their assets into oil, that means that oil is probably going to continue to go up or stay higher for longer. On Monday, the EU fined Apple almost $2 billion due to preventing Spotify from showing them other payment systems outside of the Apple payment system. And JetBlue and Spirit announced that they're ending their agreement, allowing Spirit now to go into bankruptcy. The judge says that it was going to, quote unquote, reduce competition, but now Spirit is going to go into bankruptcy, and there's going to be the same amount of reduced competition. You see how some of these judges sometimes are idiots? Tesla's European Gigafactory near Berlin halted work until further notice due to what Elon Musk called an extremely dumb suspected arson attack. They sent everybody home. They have 12,500 employees. And Apple iPhone sales, as I mentioned to you guys, in China went down 24% in the first 6 weeks of 2024. Even though the stock is up year over year, doesn't look like they're holding on to their sales title. Cathie Wood tops the charts for the most wealth destruction over the past decade of $14 billion in losses, according to Morningstar. And in technology, the European Parliament now has given the final approval for the digital ID regulation. Now it's going to pass to some other group, which is called the EU Council members, to become law. I don't understand the bureaucracy in Europe. They have groups upon groups upon groups. And the Red Sea internet cables that were cut last week is affecting 25% of global internet traffic. And if you didn't know what happened with Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube last week, they actually had significant system outages conveniently during the voting day of Super Tuesday, which may be a run-up of what we're going to see in the presidential election. Ironically, Elon Musk, which is kind of against the system, his Twitter didn't go down, which I thought was ironic. And SpaceX, which is also owned by Elon Musk, they sent 4 astronauts into space for an 8-month duration system in the ISS, or the International Space Station. And Yuri Borislov, which is the head of Russia's space agency called Roscosmos, saying that Russia and China want to put a nuclear power plant on the moon in 2033 to 35, saying that could help them start to put cities on the moon. California's mountain skiing resorts are digging out the enormous blizzard that they got hit with, over 10 feet of snow in addition to 170 miles per hour. It's about 250 kilometers per hour winds. Now there's another storm pushing into the region. I think the problem is going to be after these storms stop, because then they're going to have a huge dry period. And interesting facts, Jeff Bezos now is again the richest person in the world after Elon Musk has lost, I have it written here, $31 billion over the past year. And that's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.